Out past Neptune, way out where the sun looks more like a stubborn star than a life-giver, something weird is lurking. Astronomers nicknamed it Ammonite, a world that sits where no world should, filling a gap in the map like a fossil tucked in bedrock. Some reckon it hints at a hidden giant, the so-called Planet 9. Others say it's a gravity fossil, a time capsule from when our neighborhood was still being built. Whatever the case, Ammonite's orbit doesn't play nice with tidy theories, and that's brilliant. Tonight we'll chase the breadcrumbs, the data, the dramas, the detective work, and see why this shy little world has Aussie scientists saying, "Crikey, that changes things." For years, the odd tilt and clustering of far-flung objects tempted researchers to invoke a cosmic puppeteer, Planet 9, a hefty, unseen mass yanking strings from the dark. It was elegant, almost too elegant. Then a 2023 campaign, split between Mauna Kea in Hawaii and high, dry Chilean skies, logged a faint mover that didn't fit the script. The team tagged the track, ran it back through archival plates, and stitched a path so elongated it looked cheeky. They nicked it Ammonite after the spiraled marine fossils that carry deep time in stone. The name stuck because it felt right. Here's the kicker. Ammonite appears to sit bang on in a long-standing Q-gap, a no-man's land of perihelion distances where nothing had been confirmed. Fill a gap and you force a rethink. That's science, mate. Dr. Charlie Lineweaver in Canberra described that outer realm as our backyard bushland, familiar on the map, but full of critters we've barely seen. The late nights, frost on domes, chilled fingers on focus wheels, all that grind mattered the moment Ammonite's fit settled into place. And it's not just numbers. Museum Ammonites are fossils of oceans. Planetary Ammonite just might be a fossil of gravity, the trace of ancient pushes and tugs from when the solar system behaved like a rough building site. As astrophotographer Jax O'Connell told ABC Radio, watching the fit converge felt like finding a seashell on an empty beach and realizing the tide that dropped it came from another age. That's the vibe. By the end of tonight, you'll see why this quiet speck has kicked the hornet's nest and why that's healthy for the field. Names matter. Ammonite isn't just cute branding, it frames how we think. Terrestrial Ammonites spiral like ram's horns. The Greeks tied them to Ammon, the Egyptians to Amun. In Yorkshire, folklore they're snake stones. In museum drawers they're exquisite clocks of sediment and sea. The spiral itself appears in First Nations art across Australia, from Gurindji sand motifs to Noongar shell patterns, as shorthand for cycles, return, renewal, spiral in, spiral out. A fair dinkum way of saying the universe breathes. Planet Ammonite leans on that poetry. The object isn't big and flashy, its power is context. Think archaeology. A tiny bead can rewire a whole timeline if it shows up in the wrong layer. Same here. By occupying a previously silent slot of orbital space, Ammonite says, "Your map's neat, but incomplete." Dr. Scott Shepherd once joked in a colloquium that the outer system keeps leaving sticky notes where we least expect them. This is one of those notes. Geologist Miri Taumata, a Kiwi working with a WA survey team, likes to compare fossil beds to bushfire scars. They record both violence and renewal. In the same spirit, Ammonite's orbit may encode a record of ancient encounters, a star wandering too close when the sun still had siblings, a swarm of icy bodies colliding like marbles on lino, a rogue planet shoved then lost. Just as a coiled shell keeps storm seasons in its growth lines, an extreme orbit keeps weathering from long-gone gravity squalls. There's also the psychology of discovery. Humans love patterns. We love a story arc. Sedna Leleku Honua 2012 VP113. A handful of sednoids sketched an outline, then Ammonite shaded a missing section. Without overcooking it, that's how paradigms pivot. Small, stubborn facts stack up until the old furniture doesn't fit the room. Planetary scientist Catherine Haymans calls it the slow avalanche. quiet flakes piling on, and then, suddenly, motion. Of course, not everyone's sold on the symbolism. Astrometry is brutal. Either the path fits, or it doesn't. But even the flintiest dynamical modeler will admit a good name helps the community carry a possibility long enough to test it properly. Ammonite invites us to treat the orbit like a text, not just a number, to read its curls and spacing, to ask what wrote them. That mindset encourages multidisciplinary digs, celestial mechanics, stellar nursery modeling, even galactic tide calculations where the Milky Way's mass gently kneads the outer cloud-like dough. Down in Victoria, teacher Ava Rahman gets year 10s to draw spirals while she talks through orbital energy. The kids get it. Inward is faster, outward is slower. Energy trades shape for distance. When she drops Ammonite on the board and says, "This one fills a gap," hands shoot up. "Miss, what made the gap?" That's the right question. Not which team is right, but what physical story leaves this footprint. A fossil doesn't care about your debate club. It just sits there, stubborn and eloquent, until someone reads it correctly. So yeah, Ammonite, the name sets the tone. Ancient memory, spiral time, patient evidence. It cues us to look for lineations in chaos, gentle patterns in noise, just like spotting a beach shell in a line of wrack and realizing a long-gone tide put it there. The outer solar system is a beach after storm season. Ammonites are shell, cool to the touch, oddly heavy with history, and begging to be turned over in the hand again and again. Here's how you find a whisper in a gale. You image a patch of sky, wait, image it again and subtract. Stars, galaxies, hot pixels, they stay. Anything that moves across nights, that's your quarry. The 2023 campaign blended wide-field CCDs with old-school patience. Observers at Mauna Kea battled frost and brutal wind shear. A crew in Chile leaned on that sweet, bone-dry air. Clouds are the enemy, but so is overconfidence, joked Diego Guzman, a night assistant who's seen too many false positives dance in thermal bloom. The pipeline's clever but cranky. You scrub cosmic rays, mask saturated primaries, cross-match with Gaia and watch for imposters, near-Earth stuff streaking too fast, geostationary satellites pretending to be stars, even ghost reflections. Then, like a roue-track through scrub, a candidate line emerges, faint, consistent, plausibly distant. You feed that to orbit fitters, they spit out preliminary elements, and suddenly you're on the phone at 3 a.m. hustling for follow-up time before the thing moves into moon glare. Ammonite survived that gauntlet. Archival trawls kicked in. The digital plate stacks from survey archives held a few smudges where its predicted path wandered years prior. Each recovery tightens your error bars, said dynamicist Priya Chandrasekhar. It's like hearing a song through static. Get enough notes and your brain fills the melody. By the third recovery, the perihelion range sat squarely in the Q gap. Ears pricked up across Slack channels. Someone typed the nickname, Ammonite, and it stuck. Of course, the next step is modeling, N-body integrations to see if this orbit is long-term stable, and if so, under what assumptions. Plug in the giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, toss in a hypothetical planet 9 with a range of masses and tilts. Hit go. Supercomputers whir, coffee disappears. The grad student Liam Greaves in Sydney had a whiteboard scarred with perihelion evolution plots. Look, with a hefty P9, this solution wanders off and gets yeeted, he laughed. Dial P9 down or remove it, and Ammonite hangs around, cheeky as... That kind of robustness check doesn't decide the cosmic truth, but it does tell you which stories are compatible with the new footprint. The human side's just as good. Radio producer Nerida Quinn interviewed a tired but buzzing observer who described the quiet click of a dome slit opening at midnight as the sound of possibility. Field engineer Maya Patel remembered thawing a frozen USB cable under her armpit because the focus routine bricked at 10 degrees Celsius. None of that glamour hits the paper, but it's the reason the paper exists. Science is 1,000 tiny fixes in the dark, and one plot that makes everyone in the room go, "Oh, that?" By the announcement window, the team had a conservative orbit, a sensible nickname, and an embargo date. The community did what it always does, pinged colleagues, sketched quick sanity checks, and got quietly excited. There's a lovely Australian word for that shared, restrained buzz, keen. Ammonite made people keen, not because it was flashy, but because it filled a silence with data. On the frontier, whispers matter. If you learn to hear them, you stop shouting and start listening. Sedna changed the game in 2003. A pinkish world on a path so stretched it looked like a slingshot gone wrong. Then came 2012, VP 113, Leleaku Honua, and a few others. Each edition felt improbable, like spotting a coelacanth after declaring its lineage gone. That's why researchers call sednoids relic populations. They live too far for Neptune's boot to have done the shaping, yet not far enough to be shrugged off into the Oort cloud. They're awkward, and awkward objects are diagnostically powerful. Oceanographer Asher Brooke once told a school group in Fremantle that searching for sednoids is like listening for humpbacks on a hydrophone. You catch a song, dim and lonely, then another, a little different, and you begin to guess there's a whole chorus beyond your range. Ammonite adds a bar to that song in a register we hadn't properly sampled, the Q gap. Sometimes a single note changes the key. What makes these bodies extra spicy is cosmogony, the story of how our system formed. If the sun was born in a cluster, sibling stars would have sauntered by, their tides tugging at newborn orbits. A slow pass 1 billion kilometers away leaves a permanent signature. Perihelia raised, inclinations tweaked, eccentricities frozen. Think of a gentle shove on a child's swing. One nudge at the right time sets a pattern that lasts. Sednoids might be swing-set kids pushed by ghosts. Cultural echoes help anchor the wonder. In Yolngu songlines, sea and sky mirror one another. Stories track tides and stars together, binding navigation to memory. Sednoids sit at that junction, ocean imagery for cosmic distance. The spiral shell, the long migration, the return. When Elder Jakapura blessed a star party in Arnhem Land, he spoke about reading old paths in the night. That phrase landed for astronomers. It is, in a word, sednoid science, reading old paths. Critically, rarity cuts both ways. With so few data points, it's risky to overgeneralize alignments or clustering. That's partly why Planet 9 gained traction. Some arrangements look too neat to be random, but as surveys widen and biases get tamed, the neatness can blur. Ammonite doesn't kill P9 nor crown it. It stresses the model, and stressed models either adapt or break, which is exactly how we learn. Every orbit has a fingerprint. Semi-major axis, the size, eccentricity, how stretched, inclination, how tilted. For years, the distribution of perihelia, how close these objects get at their nearest, showed a lean patch, a Q gap. People argued about whether it was real or observational bias. Then Ammonite rolled in and sat right where the plot looked toothless. The gap got teeth. Picture a footy oval. The inner planets play midfield. Jupiter's the ruck, Saturn the tall forward, Neptune a gritty halfback. Out beyond the boundary fence, a few boots thump the ball from ridiculous distance. That's your sednoids. The Q gap is the section of turf no one seemed to kick from. Ammonite plants a muddy print there. You revisit your playbook. In dynamical terms, it's about stability islands. If Planet 9 is big and bossy on a particular tilt, certain perihelia become no-go zones. Particles either get shepherded away or flung. But as Liam Greaves' whiteboard showed, remove or weaken P9 and islands appear where once there were holes. Ammonite's survival hints the outer wilderness isn't being manhandled by a giant, or If it is, the giant's gentler than some fits suggested. There's also the galactic tide, the slow, background pull from the Milky Way's mass. Over eons, it raises and lowers orbits like swell on a beach. Add in the odd stellar flyby, back when the sun hadn't drifted far from its birth cluster, and you get a symphony of little influences building a big shape. Composer Gillian Howell describes minimal music as patterns that phase and catch, making pockets of stillness. That's the outer system, patterns phasing and catching, with pockets of stillness where bodies can linger. The Q gap may be less an absence and more a subtle stillness we hadn't sampled. Skeptics ask, fair enough, whether survey biases could conjure the whole drama. Point taken. Wide, deep, uniform surveys, Vera Rubin Observatory, we're looking at you, will mop a lot of that up. Until then, Ammonite, sitting neatly in a previously quiet bin, is exactly the sort of datum that pushes the conversation from ideology to parameter space. You stop saying never and start asking under which conditions. And this is where the fossil metaphor earns its keep. Fossils don't just say something lived, they constrain environment, salinity, temperature, sediment load. Orbits don't just say something survived, they constrain history, who pushed, how hard, and when. Ammonite's perihelion is less a number than an environmental proxy for an era we don't remember. When Battigan and Brown floated Planet 9 in 2016, it scratched a deep theoretical itch. A distant Neptune-class world on an inclined track could herd several outliers into a tidy family. The press loved it, the maths behaved, the narrative felt inevitable, and yet telescopes kept coming up empty. That's not fatal. Big sky, faint target, but it's a drip feed on confidence. Ammonite is awkward for the bolder P9 fits. Some versions of the giant boot or scramble Ammonite-like orbits over giga-years. Dial back the mass, tweak the tilt, and sure, you can keep both. But the locus of nice solutions shrinks. Planetary scientist Caitlin Crater calls this elegance erosion. The idea still works, but the parameter set looks increasingly contrived. You can keep playing Tetris or consider moving the couch. On the other hand, a weak P9 or even a past Etwai, now ejected planet, yes, that's on the table, could leave scars we misread as present tense herding. Think of tire tracks across a muddy paddock. Fresh, maybe, but they could also be yesterday's hardened in the sun. Dr. Alan Duffy told a Melbourne crowd that the most dangerous words in astro are "it must be," because the cosmos is under no obligation to be neat. So where does that leave us? With a good fight, frankly. Camps sharpen arguments, simulations get better, selection effects get beaten down with broader surveys. P9 fans aren't dills, skeptics aren't killjoys. Both push toward a model that earns its keep across all the data, Ammonite included. If a giant's out there, we'll bag it. If not, we'll retire the ghost with a nod and a beer, grateful it led us to look harder. Option 1, galactic tides. The sun rides the Milky Way's disk. The dark halo and stellar mass tug constantly. It's gentle, like swell, but over billions of years, gentle winds. Perihelia ratchet upward, inclinations wander. Option 2, a stellar flyby back in the sun's birth cluster. A brush a few hundred AU away would permanently loft a subset of orbits. There are simulations where one good nudge paints a sednoid-like population without any present giant. Option 3, a lost planet, born here, bullied by the giants, and flicked into interstellar night. Its brief reign could have carved signatures we're now mistaking as ongoing control. Like a bossy kid who moved schools but left the classroom seating plan weird for years. Option 4, the spicy one, dark matter substructure. If clumps exist on solar system scales, debatable, they could behave like invisible, transient herders. It's a long bow, but not beyond discussion at coffee. The point isn't to throw spaghetti, it's to keep physics honest. Ammonite says, any story you tell about this frontier must make room for me. That's not an obstacle, It's a calibration. Good models welcome awkward guests. In museums, kids press noses to glass, staring at Ammonite spirals, tiny universes of calcium and time. Planet Ammonite is that sensation writ large. It reminds us the solar system is still speaking, not in fireworks, but in quiet orbits that carry memory. Educator Sienna Ward in Perth gets teens to sketch spirals, then map them onto energy diagrams. Eyes light up when math turns into shape. That's the gift, abstraction becoming story. For Australians, the bush teaches patience. You don't stomp and expect wildlife to show. You wait, listen, let the place reveal itself. Outer system work is the same. Ammonite is a shy animal on the edge of the clearing. The right stance isn't triumph or despair, it's respect. We've mapped oceans by following whales. We'll map the cosmic deep by following sednoids. And if fossil of gravity sounds poetic, good. Science needs poetry to keep its moral compass, to remind us that numbers serve meaning, not the other way round. So, what's Ammonite? A modest ice rock with an immodest lesson. Fill one gap, and the whole picture shifts. Whether Planet 9 survives the audit or bows out gracefully, this object has already earned its place as a teacher. It tells us the outskirts aren't empty. They're composed, a slow, patient music with missing notes we're finally hearing. Keep listening, and the melody strengthens. Keep sampling, and yesterday's silence becomes today's verse. Out, where sunlight is thin and nights are endless, Ammonite loops on. Proof that the universe hides its biggest truths in its quietest corners. If that sparked your curiosity, smash the like, chuck us a sub, and share this with a mate who loves a proper space mystery. Drop a comment. Does Ammonite make you lean toward Planet 9 or toward tides and flybys doing the heavy lifting? And hey, thanks for sticking around. Your time means heaps. We'll keep the kettle on and the dome warm. And next time, we'll head further into the dark and listen for another faint note in the cosmic song. Cheers, legends.